up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2019 Toyota Avalon. Huge thanks to Toyota for flying me all the way out here to sunny San Diego to review the brand new Avalon for you guys today. So about the Avalon, well, it's now based on the all-new TNGA platform, which is the platform they're also using on the Camry. And so it's completely new from the ground up, and the styling, of course, is all new as well and much more radical than previous Avalons. I think it actually looks pretty good though. It's definitely bolder, but I do actually enjoy these headlights. Look really cool, almost have a Lexus look to them, very sharp. They're also, you know, the dynamic headlamps, and they also have this new sequential function in the way they illuminate for the turn signals, which is a really cool look. And that's kind of a new thing as well. And also you can see these little like air curtains in the front bumper that are actually functional and help with the airflow. So all this crazy, you know, aggressive styling up front here actually is functional, and I think it actually looks quite cool. Going down to the sides here, you can see this body line that sweeps all the way to the back here and kind of splits off and makes a Y as part goes down, part goes up, and the upper part continues on all the way to those tail lamps. Then going out back, those tail lights are really cool looking. Again, they kind of scoop inward from the original starting point there, so they kind of have a ridge to them and just a very cool look to them that is very unique. Again, I also like you have the Avalon badging there across the middle portion of it, and they also have the sequential function there on the back as well. And so again, something that has never been seen here on a Toyota, and really not too common in any vehicles these days. I think it's a really cool feature there and helps it look a little more futuristic. Otherwise though, here on the touring one, this is the sportier version, so you know, a few other cool little things. You have the quad tip exhaust there with the dual exhaust in the back. You also have these wheels that have a very cool three-dimensional look to them, so that the spokes aren't even, and so one part comes out a little further than the other, and it makes for a really cool look, especially in person when you can really get the depth of it. I also like the black accents you have here on the touring one with the black mirrors and badging and things like that, and overall I think it's a really great look. Whereas for the interior of the 2019 Avalon, well, it's a very nice place to be. So this one I'm in now is the Touring, which is the most expensive trim, but isn't actually the most luxurious. That is the limited trim, which is more of a luxurious setup. So it has a softer suspension, real wood on the inside, and full leather seats. These seats do have mostly leather here. It's perforated, but there is some Alcantara inserts on the sides here, but that's just to give it a sportier feel. The Touring is supposed to be a little bit of a sportier one. And the bolstering, you know, is still consistent with, you know, a more family sedan type seat, you know, but it does have, you know, a little bit of extra grip here with those Alcantara inserts, and very comfortable seats, of course, and they're heated and cooled as well. Lots of adjustability, and just they have a nice softness to them though that makes them really, really comfortable. Next to the steering wheel on the Avalon, which is pretty nice, you know, not too different from other Toyotas, but I like the perforated leather here around the 9/3 grip, which is a very good 9/3 grip. Tiny little 10/2 notches, and overall just, you know, it's a nice feeling wheel. You have a few buttons here on it, and you know, nothing too complicated and nicely simplified. You do also have paddles here on the back, which are interesting in their shape, where you can actually, where it falls at the 9/3 grip isn't within view whenever you're driving. You can see these other parts that come up towards the back here, but the paddle does extend so that, you know, you can actually get an easy reach of it here. And so overall, it's a pretty nice feeling wheel. Next are the gauges here in the Avalon, which are very good. You know, they're electroluminescent, so, you know, it's a little darker, and you have the white that comes through, and looks really good with the analog gauges there. You do have a nice large digital portion in the middle, which will show obviously a digital speedometer, also your fuel economy, things like that, also all your driver assist stuff, audio stuff, all the basics for the most part. Nothing too advanced in there, but you know, it is nice and large fonts, and you know, full color and everything. And so overall, you know, really nice, but pretty simple set of gauges as well. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, right up top, you have this large 9-inch infotainment display. It's Entune 3.0, and so along with that is a JBL sound system, which has 1200 watts here in the Touring trim, and is a very powerful stereo from what I've been told, and we'll of course test that out as we go for a drive. But anyway, so you know, it's pretty nice with its setup here. I do like how you have the map as the background on the home screen here, and then you have the audio portion here off to the left, so you know, you do also have these hard buttons, which is kind of nice, you know, similar to what you see in some other manufacturers' stuff as well. And I do like this because, you know, they used to have the capacitive touch stuff, which was cool looking, but was a little hard to, you know, kind of figure out if you're driving and aren't super familiar with it. This is very easy to figure out, and just a few different things. The big news here, though, for this infotainment system is that it actually has Apple CarPlay and Amazon Alexa. Unfortunately, there isn't any Android Auto still, but still, the CarPlay is a huge, nice improvement, since that's something something that's been lacking from Toyota products, and so I'm glad they're starting to roll it out here with the Avalon. And so that's really great, especially here on this 9-inch display. It's a really nice high-resolution display and works really well. Coming down, you have your climate controls here, which are, pretty basic, looking, nothing too advanced here, just a little, black and white display, and that's also where you'll find your heated and cooled seat controls. But yeah, overall, this interior is very nice, and actually feels almost like a Lexus in a lot of ways, but there is one thing that stands out as being a little cheap on this interior, to me at least, and that is this plastic piece that runs from the bottom of the climate control all the way back to the center armrest here, and it's just a cheap looking and just hard feeling plastic that just seems a little out of place in this otherwise very nice interior, and that's the only thing that it's kind of a glaring thing though, because it's such a large piece here. I wish that was maybe glossy or just something that had a little bit of padding to it. I do have to say this is a pre-production version, so maybe that's something that will be improved on the full-on production versions, because otherwise, like for example, you have nicely padded knee areas here that are really nice, and everything, it has a very nice feel to it. Everything else is soft touch. Even the dashboard has a little bit of give to it and has some nice soft touch materials, but then just for this one piece that you're actually going to probably be touching from time to time, for that to be so hard is just not the greatest in my opinion, but other than that, like I said, the interior is very nice. As far as storage space in the Avalon, it's pretty good. So first off, in the doors here, you have a bottle holder and another little part of the pocket there as well, and then coming over to the center here, you have this cool pass-through on the sides of this center cubby, and it is a nice large space right up top here, but actually you can push that back and then it goes even deeper, and you also see a wireless charging pad here in this one, and so nice to have that as very handy feature for anyone who has a phone that can do the wireless charging, and a nice large space. You can fit even the largest of smartphones in there with ease. Then you have two cup holders that are nicely divided out here, and some nice leather feeling material here surrounding it, and then you have the center armrest, which is nice and softly padded. It actually has a lot of give to it and feels really great to rest your elbow on. And then anyway, you open that up, and then you see two tiers. This top part is removable, but that can fit obviously your wallet, keys, things like that. And then anyway, you can lift that up or slide it, and then you can see there's a large amount of space in there. You can fit everything you need to fit, really good as far as sedans go. You also find 3 USB ports, although only one of them actually is actually works the CarPlay and that type of stuff, the audio inputs. The others are just charging ports. There's also 2 in the back seat. So you have 5 USB jacks in this car total, but only one does actually control the audio. You also have an auxiliary jack in there still, which is nice. So there also is no more CD player as well. That's something that people just don't use these days, and so that's something they removed because of that. But you of course have all the other audio inputs like you've always had. Backseat space in the Avalon is a really nice place to be. So I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself, I have about 5 to 6 inches of legroom there to spare, and about an inch or 2 of headroom too. So overall, it's a pretty spacious and roomy backseat. Not the largest out there, I don't think, still, but is a good amount of space, for this class and segment. I think it's perfectly good. You also have a fold-down center armrest there. It also has 2 cup holders in there as well. And looking forward, like I said, you'll see the 2 USB jacks back there to plug and charge, and you also see air vents and also a heated outboard rear seats as well, which is a really nice feature here in the Touring one and the Limited as well. Trunk space in the Avalon is also really nice and large. It's a nice wide opening, and the trunk itself is nice and long and deep and wide, and especially those side pockets there towards the back of the trunk have a lot of space. I mean, you can fit very wide objects, I think, in this trunk. And also, if you lift up the floor there, you'll see an actual spare tire as well under there still, which is nice to see. And so overall, it's a really nice, large, spacious trunk. And if you need even more room, the seats do fold flat here for the first time in the Avalon, I think. And so that's really nice as well to have that additional capability. All right, so start up and go for a drive. So the Avalon here has this unique Avalon key. This one has a little sticker on it there, but it actually says Avalon there on it, and it's a nicer key than what I've seen in other Toyotas recently, and so has some black buttons there on the back. But anyway, it's of course keyless entry, push button start. It has a proximity key as well, so you just put your foot on the brake, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off in the 2019 Toyota Avalon. Well, again, I'm in the Touring trim here now. I will hop into a Limited later to compare the softer suspension to the firmer suspension here of the Touring trim. But the first thing that I'm noticing is actually the exhaust system, which you wouldn't expect, but this has a V6 engine, and it has a really nice burble here on the Touring trim. The Touring and the XSE, get this quad tip exhaust that actually is sport tuned, they say. So it gives it a little bit of a sportier sound. You might be able to hear there as we went through a little overpass. And so it's actually got a nice little burble that you wouldn't think you'd be able to hear, you know, on the inside here, but it's actually loud enough that you can hear it here from the inside of the vehicle. And so it actually gives it a little bit of a sportier feel whenever you're just cruising around, even at low speeds. Other things to note here while we're just cruising behind some traffic is it has a really nice ride. So again, all the Touring and XSE versions have the sportier tuned suspension, which is actually supposed to give it, you know, a little bit better handling, a little bit of a firmer ride. But again, we are talking about the Avalon here. You know, this isn't gonna be sports car stiff or anything. Still very smooth over these bumps. I'll try and hit some manhole covers and potholes here, but it hooks them up so well. You know, again, this all new platform I think really helps as well. Just it makes it feel really advanced, you know, and still actually feels pretty flat, you know, as we're just kind of dodging potholes here a little bit here and there. But it's just a very smooth, quiet ride. You don't hear a whole lot of the outside either. You know, it's very well insulated, and so it makes for a very upscale feeling ride. Another thing about the Touring trim specifically is that it's the only one that gets the new adaptive suspension here in the Avalon, which actually makes adjustments every 20 milliseconds to make it either, you know, softer or harder depending on, you know, what the circumstances necessitate. And so that actually should help as far as, you know, just cruising around town or also whenever you're on a back road. Visibility in the Avalon is also quite good, like you would expect out of a, you know, larger, luxurious vehicle of this type. Very large windshields, easy to see out of. It drops down nicely too. You don't really even see the hood, so very easy forward visibility. View out of the sides is great with large side windows that, you know, come down pretty low here. You also have mirrors that are mounted to the doors, so you have a nice, you know, thin A-pillar there without too much bulk. And then view out of the back is also really good too. You have this nice frameless rear view mirror, which is really nice as well. Other things to note here about the Avalon are it defaults to eco mode, and even in eco mode, you know, it has pretty sharp throttle response, I have to say. It also has this 8-speed automatic transmission that's very responsive and eager to downshift, which means that, you know, you're never waiting around really. Again, it's a little bit lazier, you know, whenever you're in normal mode here, and just try and smooth things out a little bit. Thankfully, there is a Sport and a Sport Plus mode as well, which will nicely sharpen that up whenever we get onto a back road. But other things here, while we're just still in the eco mode here, steering actually has a nice weight to it. You know, I was expecting it to actually be lighter than it is, but I appreciate that, especially, again, I'm assuming that's the difference of the Touring trim here. Just makes it feel a little tighter, nice and precise steering though, that actually, like I said, just is nicely weighted and feels really good. But we'll put it into Sport Plus mode, and let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Okay, I think I felt the front wheels even spin a little bit. Man, it really likes to rip up in the top end. So the Avalon here for 2019 has this 3.5 liter direct and port injected V6 engine that does actually 301 horsepower now and 263 pound-feet of torque. And so no 0 to 60 times were given, but, you know, I'd say it's you know, probably right up there as what you would expect from, you know, a V6 Camry or something like that. Although this is a little bit heavier. These weigh around 3,600 pounds. I think it's like 3,631 to be exact. And so, you know, it feels definitely a little bit heavier, a little bit more to get up and go, but 301 horsepower is plenty. If you don't need that much power, you can also go for the hybrid version, which has 215 horsepower combined. Another thing, speaking of this engine, is the sound of it. You know, like I said, you get some nice sound, and in addition to just the actual exhaust note, you also get a little bit of help here from the sound system, where it will pipe in some of that engine sound from this V6, and that'll actually change depending on what drive mode you're in as well. So it'll you know, give you a little more volume whenever it knows you want to hear it, and whenever you don't, then it kind of mellows it out a little bit. But that's a cool little thing. Again, just to add a little more excitement, a little more flavor to the driving experience here of the Avalon, to kind of spice it up a little bit. But as we're going up into the canyons here, another thing while we're in Sport Plus mode is the steering weight gets a little heavier, again, to aid with that sporty feeling, and it actually does help it to feel really nice and planted. Also, like I said, you have this variable suspension here in the Touring, and you know, I'm not pushing it super hard. These are more of higher speed sweepers right now, but it is staying nice and flat and planted. It doesn't have any of the mushiness that you might expect from, you know, a large luxury type sedan. It's really quite flat and feels pretty good. And I think the only thing I will say about the handling is you certainly do feel the weight of the car. It does feel like a big car when you're pushing it into corners. Visibility wise, it doesn't feel big. It's easy to keep in your lane and all that type of stuff. But I think as we are going into some tighter and tighter corners here, you just feel the weight a little bit more. Not that 3,600 pounds is really that heavy, but it's just one of those things that it does feel a little bit weightier whenever you're going through. So it's not quite as sporty as something that's a little bit smaller or a little more tuned for actual sporty driving. But you definitely do feel a difference in the ride quality as well whenever you have it in the Sport Plus mode here, where it's a little stiffer, but again, it's still very in line with a luxurious feeling family sedan. And so it's just nice that it does kind of cater to what mood you're in driving wise, but again, at the end of the day, it's still a very comfortable cruiser. Other things to note while we're in Sport Plus mode here is that the throttle response is nicely sharpened up, feels a little more eager. It still, takes a little bit of tip in before you start getting some action out of the throttle, but overall it does make it feel a lot more responsive in Sport Plus mode. One thing that is very, very responsive is the brakes. You get, a nice bite right towards the top of the pedal there, and a nice progressive feeling to the brakes as well, so that overall, all the driver inputs all feel really good. Alright, so now we're on some tighter, twistier portions of road here, and I'm still in Sport Plus mode here, and the car is a really willing dance partner, again, it still is a large car, and, that is a little weighty feeling, but, everything's nice and tight, and, feels pretty flat still, and everything just is really nicely fine-tuned, so that, whenever you're tossing it into corners and stuff, you don't feel like it's holding you back, really, you just kind of, flow into the corners and it goes right along with you. I think this adaptive suspension really helps here, especially in the touring trim, but I just think that sport tuned suspension in combination with the sport tuned exhaust and everything makes it feel fairly sporty for a family sedan. I still think it's there's other family sedans that probably handle better, of course, but again, the Avalon is supposed to be a little more on the luxury side, a little more luxurious and laid back, but it is nice that it can do the sporty thing as well whenever you ask it to. One other thing regarding this transmission is the manual mode. So it kind of has a little bit of a mind of its own, and yeah, it's not super responsive. Sometimes it's just like not even. It's like telling me I'm downshifting, but it's not actually doing it. So, but there are times where it is quick. It's just very torque converter in it, so it doesn't actually hold the RPM. It kind of bounces around all over the place. So it's interesting. It's like it's telling me it's still in second, but then it like drops down RPMs like as if it just upshifted. So yeah, I wouldn't really use the pedals too much personally, but I think just leaving it in automatic mode is how you're going to get the best performance. Another thing I want to mention briefly is the Toyota Safety Sense P that this has. So that combines all the automatic emergency braking along with the adaptive cruise control. It also has lane departure assist and lane keeping assist, so it actually will help you stay in your lane, and of course blind spot monitoring and backup camera and all that type of stuff. And overall, I think it's a nicely unobtrusive system. It hasn't given me any false warnings in my few hours of driving here, and even the lane keep assist system, you actually have to turn that on, otherwise it doesn't do any kind of intervening, and so it basically you don't even realize that some of the stuff's working in the background all the time, like the auto braking, but overall it's just a very unobtrusive system, which I like. I like the ones where it's not messing with your driving and you can just focus on driving without a bunch of warning lights and alerts and things like that. So overall, I think it's nice the way they set it up. Okay, so now I am in the limited trim of the Avalon, which does not have the adaptive suspension, does not have the sport tuned suspension or the sport tuned exhaust, and I think the exhaust is most apparent. It's amazing how much of a difference that exhaust makes on the XSE and on the touring trims. If you want a sportier Avalon, I definitely suggest getting one of those two trims, because this is very quiet and muted. I mean, you still hear a little bit up front there, but but it's amazing how strong the difference is. But one difference that isn't as strong is the handling. Actually, I'm kind of surprised. The handling isn't all that different. It still has the same, flat feeling. I was expecting, the limited one, since they said it's a softer suspension setup, I was expecting it to be really pillowy and, more marshmallowy, I guess, but it isn't. It still is nice and flat. And as we're pushing it around these tighter corners here, yeah, it's still doing a really good job. So I think, you don't get, like, for example, I'm in sport mode here in the Limited, and that still gives me the more responsive throttle and the, tighter steering, but there is no Sport Plus mode, so it's, not quite as extreme with the differences there with the modes, but it still is, sporty enough. I think, just having the, sportier looks and the sportier exhaust are the main differences between them that I can tell personally, because they all seem to handle really great. One thing I will say though is if you're doing quick transitions or quick turns of the wheel, then you can feel it be a little bit softer, and I think that's where especially the adaptive suspension really helps to immediately firm up the ride whenever it senses the conditions needing that. Whereas this, it's just kind of it still is a good ride and flat, but it's just it doesn't have as much composure, I think, and but it still is very composed. I'm splitting hairs here. But out on the highway now here in the Limited, the ride is still really nice and smooth. Seems just about as smooth as the Touring, honestly, just whenever you're cruising in a straight line on pretty well maintained roads. But I'm also using the adaptive cruise right now, which is really good. It just works about the same as all the other adaptive cruise systems out there. This one, whenever you have the shortest following distance, it still gives you a generous 1 car length, maybe 1.5, so it still gives enough of a gap that someone could cut you off and cut in if they'd like, but I guess that's what it deems as being the safest, closest following distance to allow, but overall, it's very smooth. It's not, abrupt in the way that it changes speed or brakes or anything. It's all very natural, and it's pretty cool. Alright, so I've been driving the 2019 Avalon for a little while longer here now, and one thing I got to sample a little bit is this Jbl Stereo with 1200 watts of power, I think 14 speakers, and it's really a crisp audio experience. It really makes it three-dimensional, where the vocals are really well pronounced, and everything it's just a very good sounding stereo, and so I'm really impressed with that. Another thing though that's pretty impressive is the fuel economy here. So especially if you want the hybrid, the hybrid versions are 43 in the city, 43 on the highway, and 43 combined. So all across, 43 mpg is what you get. Here at the V6 versions, they're rated at 22 in the city, 31 on the highway for combined average of 31, which isn't bad, again, for a vehicle of this type, that's a little more on the luxurious side, a little bit heavier. That totally makes sense. The last thing that actually is pretty good too is the pricing here of the Avalon. So they start out around 35,000, I think 35,500 to be exact. This Touring one, like I said, is the most expensive trim, and these start at 42,200. And at that price, I still think it's a very nice car. Like I said, aside from this one piece of plastic here that irks me a little bit on the interior, otherwise, it feels every bit of that price tag. It's got a very luxurious and smooth ride that fits something in that price category, and lots of space, lots of features, a really nice infotainment. Everything feels right up to par with everything else in that price range competitively. But overall, I'm really impressed with the Avalon here. I mean, no, it isn't a sports sedan. It still is an Avalon. It still is comfortable and luxurious, and supposed to be a little bit larger than the Camry and things like that. But I do like that they, have gone a little bit in a sportier direction, at least, with the Touring and the XSE trims now, where, you have a sport-tuned exhaust, sport-tuned suspension, the sportier looks, and I think all that, goes to help make this feel more youthful, a little more edgy than Avalons in the past, and gives it a little more of an extra dose of fun that I think, before, it was more of just a focus on being a comfortable car, and now it still has that comfort, and it hasn't given any of that up, but it's just, added a little more of a well-rounded personality, I guess you can say, so that it can do the sporty stuff, it can also do the luxurious stuff, and so, it's really great, with the drive modes and everything else to kind of custom tailor the whole drive experience to whatever your mood is. So anyway, huge thanks once again again to Toyota for flying me all the way out to San Diego to review the new Avalon. Let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.